Bonsoir tout le monde. Hi everyone. Alors, ce soir, c'est non seulement un plaisir, mais un honneur pour moi d'en fait non seulement vous présenter, mais carrément rencontrer nul autre que Derek Elliott, qui est donc en fait le chef actuel du Parti libertarien du Canada. Alors, bonsoir Derek, merci d'avoir pris mon invitation.
Thank you.
Ça va bien, Derek?
Ça va bien. Yeah, a little hard to breathe.
Alors, surprenez-vous pas, mes chers bons Québécois et Français de France qui m'écoutent, dans le sens que, exceptionnellement, et pour les fins de la chose, l'entrevue n'aura pas le choix de se faire en anglais. Ça va me faire pratiquer moi et vous aussi. Donc, en espérant que je ne sois pas trop rouillé d'ailleurs, et vous non plus. Fait que, parce que dans le fond, c'est ça, Derek se débrouille un peu en français, mais je veux dire, ça, pour les fins d'une entrevue, là, on serait mieux d'avoir la civilité de quand même parler sa langue. Hein. Donc, puis là, je ne sais pas comment mettre des traductions, tout ça. Fait que, désolé, c'est ça, ça va être comme ça, puis il va falloir vivre avec. So, where were we? So again, thanks a lot. I'm really glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So where should we start? We've been talking a little bit about your personal story, your and so on before we got on live. But one thing that really, I wouldn't say puzzled me, but really interested me was the fact that you really started your political involvement as a conservative, isn't it?
Yes, I was started as both progressive conservative federally and a progressive conservative provincially in North Bay. Being in North Bay at the late 90s, it was when Mike Harris, the Premier of Ontario, was my MPP. So it was just very easy for me to get involved in that. I have very fiscally conservative values, and I also, my grandparents and I would say mostly my grandparents were conservative. My aunt, my dad's sister, is liberal. My dad really wouldn't say one way or the other. And then my mom, I would say she was conservative, but she said she'd vote for the person more than she would vote for a party. But it was just something that I really got into. I got into politics more because of a friend in Finland when I was an exchange student, as I said before, and that really made me look into it a bit more. One of the people that actually got me involved with the federal party when we're kind of relating this to you is at the same time was when the Progressive Conservative had just fallen to two seats involving Elsie Wayne and Jean Charest. And Jean Charest was the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party. And so that's when I was really getting into the federal party was under Jean Charest. And when he started building the party up until Peter MacKay took over and led to what's now the Conservative Party with the Canadian Alliance. But it was really a great experience to be involved in both those because for those who don't know, the Progressive Conservative Party federally at that time was a very small party. Like I said, they had two seats. So as a party now that is a small party, it really allowed me to see early on how these grassroots campaigns can take over, while also with Mike Harris seeing how the grandiose premier of Ontario's campaigns go, right? So it really allowed me to see where we can take from the big and use it for the small while also using that small. Like I can't say enough about Alan Days. He was a candidate for the PC party federally in North Bay. And he took me under his wing a lot in those early years when I was 19, 20 and just starting out and took me knocking on doors and letting me see what it's like to talk to people. And that's when you really see the real causes. Because even that was before social media. Today we talk about like, oh, you hear all the campaign. And like I say this here as we're broadcasting live on social media, but it's not where you hear the real issues. I would say probably 50% of the people that comment on Facebook aren't voting, right? We're seeing the people that you would talk to at the door, they're voting. They want to know, they want to be informed. And that's one of the greatest things that we can teach new candidates and myself is that for any of our parties, provincially or federally, taking those lessons from the big parties and the small parties is knock on the doors. That's what we do.
Mhm.
Knock on the doors. Michael Harris, our deputy leader right now, he's up there. He's talking to the people out in Alberta at this moment with, as something you guys can relate to in Quebec, the sovereignty issue, right?
Yeah, that's one of the things I keep repeating
Mm-hmm.
nonstop, but I feel like everybody, when I say that in my virtual crowd, they're like, yeah, okay, but it's kind of weird. It's like the crowd, a crow speaking. But yeah, among politicians, we can understand each other on that kind of things.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to differentiate between separatism and sovereignty as well, right? I think too many times those two things are intertwined, especially today and back in the 90s with the Quebec referendum, which I still remember. And I think it's very important to understand that I think provinces can have that sovereignty without needing to separate. And that's what we're really about. And Quebec sovereignty, Alberta sovereignty is a great opportunity for us to say that's what we want federally. We want every province to have that sovereignty. We want you to have the rights to decide what your communities and what your province does.
Especially since that was actually the initial concept, the initial promise of the what was then called the Confederation, right? That there be a degree of independence that be as great as possible from the start. And it was supposed to be decentralized, but the Canada's got so much centralized over the centuries, whereas in the U.S., if I get it right, it's a bit of the opposite that happened. It started more centralized, but got quickly very more and more decentralized. It's a question of culture. We can say the libertarianism is sort of in the air, much more, at least in the U.S., probably also more in West Canada than in Quebec. But I see what you mean, and even personally, I'm from a federalist family. I've become for the for the independence of Quebec over the years, but every time there's a good leader that appears in West Canada, or at least in my eyes, for instance, now Maxime Bernier, I guess we will talk about him later, or even before Jack Layton, or when there was the occupation of Ottawa a few years ago, then I can start believing again in Canada, but there's got to be some sort of a promise of freedom. Otherwise, where's the point? You know,
You just who cares? Like if there is no promise of freedom, it's just picking a different master, right?
exactly,
That's
exactly.
yeah. It's just how much of a leash are they going to give you?
Mm-hmm.
And we're not about having leashes. I'm not into any kind of kinks or anything like that.
Which leads me to another question. Obviously, you've become over the years sort of disenchanted over not on the Conservative Party as a whole, independently of its masters or of its leader. So what exactly led you to that?
Well, when Ron Paul was running for the Republican leadership, it made me realize I was never really a conservative. I was always a libertarian. I just didn't know libertarianism existed. And I think that's one of the biggest issues with libertarianism is people don't know what it is. People still say, "Oh, you're Maple MAGA." Like MAGA is not libertarianism. Like that's just nationalism. And libertarianism is the opposite. We don't want to be nationalists. We want to be proud in our communities. We want to be localized. We want to put that pride as local as you can be instead of the national. Well, I think if you do that, that's what makes that national pride happen without having to be forced. And I think that's the difference between nationalism and patriotism is nationalism is forced. Patriotism is earned, right? Like if I'm proud of my country, that makes me patriotic. I'm proud of what my country does. And that's what I really want to see people like. I have a Canadian flag right over here. And I'm proud of it. I have a maple leaf on me, but I also have the word free tattooed right underneath of it because I want to remind myself every day that I'm free, no matter whether I'm Canadian or not. I'm a free individual, right? And then there will be arguments that I can't do a lot of things down the street, but at the end of the day, I am a free individual. I just want to make sure that those values are carried out throughout Canada and that we're not persecuted for exercising that freedom, right? Because there's a lot of things we can do walking down the street without harming others that is illegal in this country. That's what needs to change. People need to realize that one of the debates I was getting into earlier today with some people is about the crime. It's a big issue, right? And a lot of people are talking about the crime that's going on in this country and a lot of the communities around. And they say our policy is a non-policy. It's going to make things worse. And I'm like, what people don't understand is that all these crimes that are clogging up our justice system, both the jails and the courts, are causing those people to be released that shouldn't be released, because it's going to be a year before they see a judge. If we stop prosecuting people for having drugs on them, that's 10% of the crimes right there that we can speed up the process. The faster we can speed up the actual crimes being put in front of a judge, like the actual criminals being put in front of a judge, the safer our communities get. And the faster we can get them behind jail. That's the big thing that people really need to realize, is that more laws don't make us safer. They just create a bigger system that's just going to create a bigger backlog, which is going to put more people on the streets.
More problems.
Yeah. Exactly. And then on top of it, people say self-defense. Like, people think when we talk about self-defense rights and gun rights that we're talking about we want to go around shooting people. Like, no, it's the opposite. We want to make sure that no one can go around shooting us. Right now, a criminal doesn't respect a law. They don't respect any law. That's what makes them a criminal, right? So making guns illegal is not going to stop them from not owning that gun, right? Like, if they're already going to use that gun to commit another crime, they don't care about committing the crime by owning the gun.
He's going to punish good, ordinary, law-abiding citizens as usual.
Look at what's happening to Inky Mark out in Manitoba. He just had over 400 of his gun collection seized. And notice how I say gun collection, because that's what it is. This guy's a 78-year-old former MP and a mayor. He's not going around attacking people. He's got a collection because he loves history. He had an antique cannon they took. As I said in one of my things, like, who's going to defend against a pirate ship? Like, it's not up to me to decide what you want to defend your home, but at the same point, he didn't harm anyone with any of it. He didn't go around threatening anybody with it, right? So it's ridiculous.
I don't know if you can see for somebody like me, or for people in Quebec in general, or at least in the what do we call the resistance, the ones who've been opposed to the COVID measures and mandates and so on, that to us there's a contradiction between being Canadian and being a freedom lover, so to say. When you take into account the degree of coercion, of totalitarianism, as I dare to call it, that Canada is sinking on day after day. It's like a mud that we're falling into more and more. And so it's in Quebec, it's even worse, actually. So we have two extremely evil masters, the Prime Minister of Canada and of Quebec. So I hope you can understand that from my point of view, at some point you say, well, you know what, it was a nice dream, Canada, but now it's too much. We gotta help ourselves at some point, and we gotta simplify things. But it's I don't know what you have to answer to all this.
Well, one of the things that, even since day one, when I got into politics, as I mentioned, like with the Progressive Conservatives, it's been an issue since then, the language police in Quebec, right? It's been an issue. You live it. You see it every day. I've been there a little bit. I've heard the stories. And it's one of the biggest things as a libertarian I point to in Quebec, that I love culture. As I've mentioned to you in our discussions before, that I've lived multiple in different countries. I like experiencing these different cultures, and I don't want to see cultures die. But if you need the government to protect your culture, it's already dead. And so if you need laws to protect the language, to force it onto the people, it's not right. Like, I've been in Montreal, I've been in Quebec City. I know the differences between both those cities. Montreal is much more bilingual, multicultural city versus Quebec City is a very more strong Quebec French, right? Like where I went into a restaurant and the woman couldn't speak English at all. Like the waitress could not speak English. And to me, I'm just like, I've been in Finland, I've been in Philippines, I've been in many different countries where English is not the first language. And people could speak English when I went into a restaurant in a major city. So to me, that was an issue. And again, if I, as a libertarian, I look at it as like, okay, well, I just know not to come here again to this restaurant. I'll go to another one, right? That's how it's supposed to work. So if a restaurant in Quebec is not offering French, if their employee, all their signs are in English, and that's on to the Quebec people to decide, are we going to go and support that store? If you don't, good on you. You're supporting your culture. If both can survive, good on both. And that's what I think we all want to see. And I want to see these distinct cultures. And that's where I mentioned earlier about the local and the communities. By getting that sovereignty as small down to the local level as possible, you allow these local cultures to exist, where you can see Montreal culture, Quebec City culture, Sherbrooke culture, all different, not Quebec culture, right? And I think they can be similar, but be different. I've seen it all over the world where like they're proud. Like there's people in Thunder Bay that are Finnish, right? There's an entire Finland community. Some of them have never been to Finland, but they're proud of that, even though they're Canadian. They can be both. I think we can find that balance, and it's very important to understand that we can have that balance without the force, and that's the big thing. But at the same point, this is the big one where a lot of things I see like, oh, we need at a federal level to ban language police. And I'm just like, wait, that's the opposite of what we believe in. We believe in allowing the province to make that decision. And it's up to the provincial voters to make that decision. And that's why I tell people, one of my plans when I became leaders, we need a platform federally that is going to be done over 3 majority governments. Because I'm not stupid. I know. I've been in the system for long enough that all libertarian goals, we cannot get done in 1 majority government. It can't be done because we need to change the Constitution. We need to scrap the Canada Health Act. There's certain things that we can't do until we elect your party into Quebec or in Ontario, in New Brunswick, in Alberta, and British Columbia. We need those to be provincial libertarians so we can open up the Constitution so that or just scrap the Constitution. Let's be honest, it'd be just better to scrap and start fresh. And I think that's where, as we mentioned, or you mentioned earlier, where we say things that scare people, like you're a crow, or as you mentioned, like we say certain things that people are like, wait, you want to ruin the Charter of Rights and Freedoms? Yeah, we do. It's not the beautiful piece of legislation people think it is. It is garbage. It is a thing that they wanted it to be the American version, but it's the opposite. People talk about like, oh, the American Constitution is not perfect because look at all the amendments they have. No, the American Constitution is great because they opened it up to allow those amendments to occur because they knew what happens in 1776 is not going to be valid in 2026, right? And that's why they knew that they needed that system. We created the notwithstanding clause, which is the biggest piece of garbage ever. It's just saying like the rest of this is meaningless when we have this. And like, what's the point of the whole Constitution if you just have something that can just like, we don't care. Like that's what they were trying to do with they wanted the amendment system with the notwithstanding clause, and they completely messed it up. And that's
just to remind it to everyone. The notwithstanding clause, what we call in French clause nonobstant. I know it, but how would you rephrase it and summarize it? So
basically,
the libertarian mindset.
Notwithstanding clause says that when the Supreme Court basically overrules any law that the government has passed, they can basically say, here's the time limit, and that we can keep that law. That law is still in existence for this because we need it. Like, screw what the Supreme Court says. We need it. And that gives you 5 years to rework it, basically. That's what the idea was. But what is used in practice is that we were just going to use it for 5 years and we're going to be unelected and like another majority government's going to be in that time and not our problem at that point. And I think
it's a clause that basically says ultimately the government has the last word, and we decide, and the Supreme Court is not actually over us in any real or substantial way, and that's it, right?
Yeah, basically, yeah. It's just basically saying that the Supreme Court ruling is still binding, but they're basically saying, oh, here's when it takes effect. No, now it takes effect 5 years from now. So we can still keep this bad law for 5 years, or I believe it's 5 years. But they have a set amount of time before to rework the law, or it's thrown out. So they either have to represent it, rework it, or it gets thrown out after that time limit. And in most cases, the government is changed by that point, and they don't have to do squat.
Yeah, and one of the there's been many branches that our conversation has taken already. So on, I'm just gonna develop one in particular. When you've been saying that cultures thrive naturally, you're not supposed to need the state to protect them. Well, I agree. But what can how can we still have such a great confidence in that principle when we're being basically overwhelmed by a massive immigration, which even in the States, even in Western Canada, is being more and more labeled as problematic. There's an intention that's being that can easily be seen. Even Maxime Bernier has been quite vocal about it. But when you come to Quebec, then not only it's even worse, and it started very clearly, intently, in that sense with Jean Chrétien, at least for to use this notable instance, but it's only been increasing from that time. So that that leaves us, or leaves us libertarians here in Quebec in a strange position. We don't want to. We would like to just go for freedom at all levels. But if you take the example of Yann Rochdy, my predecessor that you got to know a little bit, I think you when we talked about him in private conversation. I wouldn't say what you said, but you sort of taken a rather strong stance upon him. But I was like, yeah, well, I personally consider that there's a very a strong racist connotation to many of his expressions, of his language. He's not the only one. That's a problem we have here. However, in terms of policy, that's something that we, him and I and many others, we understood each other quite well, in the sense that we have to tackle that problem. We have to see it as a problem. We cannot just do as in Argentina, where Javier Milei just opens his borders. Maybe the realities are not exactly the same. So you probably see what I mean. So what would you answer?
Obviously, the mass immigration on libertarian circles is a big issue, right? I see it a lot on my feeds. I get a lot of the questions. I get asked this a bit. As I mentioned in our conversations, my wife is Filipino. She is an immigrant. She was born in the Philippines. We got married in the Philippines, and she immigrated to Canada. So I like to always mention that before I talk about this, because obviously there can be a bias. But I do not want to punish people for taking advantage of a flawed system. I want to punish people.
We obviously agree on that. The problem being the system, not the people, right?
That's it. And that's what, I do not disagree with anyone. There is a flawed immigration system. We have a flawed immigration system. Why do we have a flawed immigration system? Because we have a government guaranteed social safety net. You eliminate that social safety net, the guaranteed money to anyone. And I'm not talking about immigrants. I'm talking to everyone, Canadian or non. That immigration problem is a non-issue, because the people that don't want to contribute are gone. They will leave on their own, right? We don't have to talk about remigration or whatever keyword they want to phrase it as. Forcibly taking people from their home that took advantage of a system for their families to get better. As a libertarian, I personally can't get behind that, because if they're committing a crime, I'm not talking about those people. I'm just talking about the people, whether you think their values or not. I know there are a lot of people from certain countries. People will mention India as being one of them. I don't want to single them out, but that is the one that a lot of people do mention, because they feel that they don't integrate, as people say, into our culture. And I always like to say, what is Canadian culture? But obviously, there are people that are being taken advantage of our system. They are. There are lots of people. And the ones that get
of course, since we designed a system to be taking advantage of it, it's like, please take advantage of us.
Yes. And that's why when I tell people, like, another thing, I think another great example of it is the tax loopholes, right? There are so many tax loopholes between our tax systems in Canada and the US, both. Do I blame the people that use those loopholes? No. That's just being intelligent. Like, why would I blame someone for undercutting their competitors in a business? That's just smart business.
But
So
could
if
be more intelligent than to exploit a flawed system, especially.
That's it. I had a friend growing up in the Conservatives. I still, like last time I was up north, I actually sat down, and we always have a beer together whenever we're in a town together. And his father was one of those people. He said, like, as far as the government's concerned, I live under the poverty line. Because that's how he does the tax system. He makes it look like he's under the poverty line, because everything's by the business. I went to business school at Canada College in North Bay, and one of the teachers, the first day he looked at it as like, all right, this class is going to teach you about taxation. Just so you know, I have 3 cars in my driveway. I have not paid a dime for any of them. That's literally his opening line of our class, because he knows the tax system, and he has a company where those companies own those cars, and they're all write-offs. So he literally was able to do it without paying a dime. Like, this is when I was starting to get like, oh, that's when I was a fiscal conservative. I'm like, we need to do something. And I didn't know about libertarianism yet, as I mentioned earlier, right? So this is when I was getting that feeling like our system is broken. Even when I was in the system with the conservatives, I knew there was something wrong. I thought I was fixing it in there. I still thought, even in the mid-2010s, that I could fix it from within the conservatives as well. And I was wrong. If you look at on my Facebook page, you'll see a lot of the comments from what conservatives can think of libertarians. There are a lot of libertarians in the Conservative Party, and we need them. And I know I'll just do a little bit of a divergence here with that one, where the vote splitting, we get that, like how I mentioned, I want to take those votes away. I don't want to take conservative votes away. I want to take conservative votes away. I want to take liberal votes away. I want to take Green Party votes away. I want to take NDP votes away. I want to take away from all of them. And as I tell people, you cannot vote split, because if someone's not voting for your party anymore, there's a reason. You can't blame us for being the one that speaks to those people now. You blame your party. Blame your leader for not speaking to those people anymore.
You can't basically blame freedom. In other words, neither freedom to vote, neither freedom of speech. Sorry, that's our opinion. The only crime or thought crime in all this is to vote for someone else than the one you believe in, or some other ideology that the one you believe in. That actually messes things up and makes it way too complicated.
And if you think about it, one of my favorite things to do with the conservatives specifically, who bring up vote splitting, because they're usually the ones that will bring it up the most, and it's, why is your party, if you're so worried about vote splitting, not getting rid of first past the post? Right? It's because it works in their favor. So they want the system we have. And that's where I always I really love to do this with all the people. If your party is so great, why doesn't it do this, this, and this? I can think like a liberal. I can think like a conservative. I can think like an NDP.
Or if your system is so good, what you say is good. It's true for the party. It's true for the system. If it's so good, why doesn't it do this and that?
Well, for example, one of the things like UK just did it. Why has no Canadian party that believe in state control come out and said, you know what? Anyone that turns 19 next year, you cannot smoke. Nope. The progressive smoking age, right? Where it's like,
as they actually do in Quebec. No social network, no Red Bulls, no nothing basically.
Like, exactly. So like if you really want to use state control, why aren't you using state control? If this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. We know it's bad, but we just as libertarians like, you know it's bad. Why if you want to take it, go ahead. But like that's your choice, right? And that's why I always get them is the conservatives like, why don't you do this? Or the liberals like, why aren't you in favor of this? Or why isn't your party pushing this? I make them want to question their own party because that's how I became a libertarian. I questioned the conservatives about why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we putting something in that says we have to balance the budget? Like this is one thing I talked to as I mentioned before, my best man at my wedding was working for the Conservative Party and it works in the Alberta Conservative Party now. And we have this conversation and I said, it says something that I've been around politics since Brian Mulroney was prime minister. And the most fiscally conservative finance minister or prime minister in that time was freaking Paul Martin. Like, think of what he did. Like, I'm not here to push the liberals at all. But if we're being honest, Paul Martin,
the zero deficit policy.
He was paying. He paid the debt. He was paying the debt down. How many finance ministers or prime ministers can you say was paying down the debt?
And he's been hated so much for doing so.
And that is the one thing he shouldn't be hated for. There's plenty of hate Paul Martin and Jean Chrétien for, but that's the one thing we should praise them for. They literally were doing what we say we're going to do. And one of the things I want to do is I would love to create legislation, if I were a member of parliament, that would fix budget with the GDP and force debt payment. So they would, one, create a fourth balanced budget every time. And two, because it would fix the tax rate with the GDP and the budget. And then it would also require debt payment. Like one, the debit, whatever the interest is, times two. So that you're paying off the interest plus you're reducing the principal. And on top of that, you do that as well as order the Bank of Canada to start purchasing back dollars that have been printed to be destroyed. What do? You're lowering the money supply. You're paying down the debt. Oh, we increase the value of the Canadian dollar. And now Canada economy strengthens. How did we do that? By getting government out of the way.
Very eloquent explanation. I would like to, at this point, to put the focus on a certain person named Maxime Bernier, considering at least two things that you've mentioned. First, he's also someone who's basically been questioning not only the government, but the Conservative Party. I think it was then a minister under Harper. And which is a process quite similar to the one you've described. But then if the notion of vote division applies to someone, it's probably especially to someone like him, since he's sort of a half blood or a half breed. He's not without being conservative enough in the current sense of it. To fit in the Conservative Party, it's like too conservative for the Conservative Party, but not libertarian enough to be a libertarian. So when I met him, I said, "Do you consider yourself as a libertarian?" He had the authenticity, the honesty of saying, "No, I'm not a real libertarian. I'm just for freedom, for individual freedom." So what? I probably sort of answered my own question, but would be your own take on that? What do you think of him, of his party? Is it a contribution that he's making, because he's making, in a way, libertarian ideals and propositions more accessible, available to democratic, you know, it makes it more democratic, more it makes it well known to more people. But then that it's also sort of a net of a trap, because that keeps potential real libertarians from people like us. So
it's so he's a very interesting situation. I'll give you a bit of history. Not sure how much public knowledge this is or not. So when I was not involved in the party, I was, because of the work I was doing at the casino, I wasn't allowed to be involved in politics as part of my contract. And at that time, PPC hadn't existed yet. Tim Moan, our leader, who I mentioned to you personally before, he was the leader that when I was voted deputy leader, we got elected at the same time. He replaced Katrina Chone, and he was actually trying to get Maxime Bernier. He said Tim had offered to step down as leader and offer the spot to Maxime Private to get him to become the first MP for the Libertarian Party of Canada. He had a lot of conversations with him. And then the PPC was created, literally within weeks. It was basically, he was basically asking information to create the PPC. So there is a bit of there's some blood in the water, basically, with that relationship between our party and Max and the PPC, because he basically didn't want to
stole your ideas to just benefit from it.
Not just that, how we were built as a party. He wanted to learn the building blocks of how to create his own party, and he was instead of having, like, those talks were on our side as to, from my understanding, again, I wasn't involved in the talks, right? So, but he was being talked to come in to become the leader. Like, these were from our side. From his side, he was basically taking the talks as, how do I create my own party and what can I learn from these guys? And he actually ended up taking a lot of the people.
It's strange, because you guys were already offering him, like, the kingship, so to say, the power he seemed to want. Why would he want to create his own thing?
I think it's because he had a lot of support from the former reformers, like the people that were in the Conservative Party that were reformers. Because when I mentioned before, like, I was part of the Progressive Conservative Party when the merger happened with the Canadian Alliance to become the now Conservative Party of Canada, I remember it as there were the hardcore reformers and the hardcore right of center PCs that did not like it. They like, this idea is not these ideas over here, right? So they both are anyone that knows at that time the PC party and the Reform Party, there's a reason why they were separate, why after the Mulroney this happened. And Harper is a reformer, right? Pierre would be considered a reformer, where those people still, I know a lot of the people that are in the PPC in North Bay.
Which Pierre are you referring
Pierre Poilievre. I would say Pierre Poilievre. He wasn't, obviously the Conservative Party was when he became, but I think if the Reform Party existed instead, he would be a Reform Party member, not a PC party. That's my personal opinion. Again, I could be completely wrong, but complete opinion. But I do know that in North Bay, in the Nipissing riding, most of the PPC are the former Canadian Alliance and reformers. And when I was running up there, before the PPC ever existed, I was getting some of those people, like a person that ran the Canadian Alliance was their campaign manager, was reaching out to be my campaign manager. It's because they were very libertarian ideals, right? We speak to those reformers, those hardcore right-wing style ideas that aren't the left-wing ideas. And that's where I think the big issue is between PPC, if we get back to it, and libertarian, is that we aren't the same. They're not libertarian, right? They're far right libertarians. They're a small sect of libertarians. Libertarian, as we try to tell everybody, we are not left or right. We are anti-authoritarian. There are great things on the left that are anti-authoritarian, and great things on the right that are anti-authoritarian. I think that's where we need to show people, like, Everyone thinks that, oh, you're a fascist. No, we're the opposite of fascist. We're the opposite of communist. Fascist is authoritarian right wing. We're non-authoritarian everything. And that's, people don't, it was our schooling, right? I'm not sure about the Quebec school system, but on Ontario school system, we were taught the left versus right spectrum. That's it. Everything's here. But as libertarians, we know this is the spectrum, not this. And I think we need to educate more people like that. And I think
that's so important. But I know what you mean. But why don't you take the opportunity to actually explain it?
So instead of just the simple left-right spectrum that most people are taught in school, here's your center, left, right, right? The NDP, Liberal are left of center or far left. Conservatives are right of center or far right. But that usually means one believes more in government control, the other one believes in fiscal responsibility. When you get down to it, though, there's authoritarian and non-authoritarian, which goes this way. So you can be communist, which is authoritarian, but far left, which is all about the community, get the resources together. But you can also be authoritarian on the right, which is fascist, which believes in a nationalist state where pride in the nation will do everything. If we all are proud in the nation, we will all do what's needed to bring the country up. That's both authoritarian. We're against both of those things. So one of the things I tell people about left-wing libertarianism is when I said earlier about bringing things down local, when we were talking about sovereignty, when you make things as local as possible, you allow communes to exist as long as they're voluntary. You're not forcing someone into your commune. You're not saying, you are now part of this commune. We are going to take this. It belongs to us, and we would divide it. If you all have all like-minded individuals come together and want to do that, I don't think it will work. But if you think you can make it work, you should be allowed to do that. And libertarians believe you should be allowed to do that as long as there's no force. And that's the authoritarian. When the government has to use force to get you to comply, that's authoritarianism. The less force used by the government, the more libertarian you get. So it's authoritarian, libertarian, left wing, right wing.
So we're right at the center in the end, and after all.
Well, center bottom, far bottom.
Well, if we get back to Bernier, I could almost take his defense in a sense, because after all, what he basically wanted to do in leaving the so-called conservative party was to actually create what we could be labeled and seen as a real conservative party, which would be sort of a intermediate state by definition between this kind of second liberal party that is the actual conservative party, and a libertarian more hardcore party. So would that make sense to you? Do you think we could sit in this way, like being just a simple real conservative party, the PPC?
One of the things that I think is, and I hammer this a lot to a lot of people, is about principles, right? We, as our party, we actually we're the party of principles for us, because we don't feel the conservatives or the People's Party have. Now, the reason I say that, and I understand that it's a very strong statement to say they don't have principles, but I say it right in the name. Like, populism is not having principles, in my opinion, because you are changing with what's popular. You're doing what will get you elected. And there are a lot of people out there that believe when they elect someone, they're their boss now. I'm the electorate. You're the MP. I'm your boss. That's a messed up thing to think. That's not how it works. And people think that it doesn't matter who it is, you need to answer to the people that are in your riding. But that's why we have the party system. And I saw one of the comments where we'd be better off with non-parties. And one of the things we believe in is we're one of the only parties that actually in our platform we have a free vote policy where there is an issue where we say, as a party, we don't have a position. Each individual candidate has their own position. And that's part of getting rid of that party whip idea of when you vote for someone, you're not voting for that person in this country. You're voting for the party. They're a vote for that party. That's all they are. Like, we've seen that when they can just go back and forth. As you mentioned, the conservatives are so liberal that people can just jump to the Liberal Party, even though they were voted as a conservative, because they're so similar in their ideals. And that's where Bernier was saying what Pierre is saying now, but 10 years ago. And that's why he got kicked out. And that's why I don't trust either one of them. Do I trust Max more than Pierre in that he's true in what he's saying? Yes. I don't believe anything Pierre says is true. His voting records. This is what I was been saying yesterday, actually, all day today, actually, with people, that my entire post on Facebook and X was about his voting record. No one talks about his voting record. People say it doesn't matter. It does. Because his voting record, I'm not talking about the last 12 years voting record. I'm talking about his voting record when he was under Harper, and Harper was the prime minister. Because he says he's for small government, but he expanded the state. He voted for it. He voted for budgets that expanded the debt. These are the opposite of what he says. When he ran in the last election, he said, we won't balance the budget in this next term. Term, not year. Term. You're a conservative and you're not going to balance the budget in 4 years? I'll do it in one. I'll do it in a month. There's so much waste. Bye-bye. Like, they're afraid to hand out government pink slips because why? And that's the big thing. That's what's wrong with our system. How many people are employed by the government in this country? That's why everyone thinks the government's great. Because they know the minute we start cutting it, they got to find a real job. A job that wouldn't exist. If the government creates the job, it's because the market doesn't. If the market doesn't create it, it shouldn't exist. And people, this is one of the things that the bailouts is another one where the similarities between conservatives and liberals, right? And we get this a lot where people are like, oh my God, the condo bailout the liberals are doing. I'm like, you're a conservative and you're bashing bailouts. Your party bailed out the auto industry. And then what's their instant response to that? The crow again. I've said like, oh, I said something, right? And they're just like, well, you'd want to see the auto industry die? I'm like, if it's meant to die, it's meant to die. We say the things that the average politicians won't say. And that's where I think we are really different than the PPC. They are still politicians. We're not really politicians.
And being a politician and being a populist is sort of an equivalence in a sense. Bernier being, Polyev being maybe the best example of that. And because if there's one main criticism that Bernier addresses to him is that of changing his program by the week in terms of what's in the polls. But what you're making, the point you're making us realize is that if you take his voting record, he's always been like this, and most politicians, that's a real issue. I mean, the more popular they are, the more power they have. It's because at some point they have the less authenticity you can expect that to have. They're going to say one thing and do another. And you can tell that they have no core values and no actual program and nothing they actually believe in. So, and that's a kind of politician that we encourage and that we give our power to.
Yeah. And the worst part is a lot of people are buying the illusion that he's creating, because people will say like, oh, but under Harper, we had he left with a balanced budget. Like, you're just listening to talking points, though. Pierre says we had a balanced budget when we left government. Yes, but to do that, did Harper cut government services? No, he didn't. What did he do? He sold assets that were making the government money. He sold stock that was earning money for the government. He was doing all these one-trick ponies that he knew 100% that if they got reelected, he was not going to have a balanced budget the next year. He knew 100% he was going to have a deficit because of what he did to balance the budget the year before. That's not fiscal conservatives. That's not being a conservative. That's doing something to get elected. He knew that if it was, I balance the budget and I call an election, I'm going to get reelected. He didn't. And we're cleaning up the mess still to this day because the Trudeau and Carney have thought they had the master plan and it just made it worse. And then 2020 made it worse.
So, talking about of parties, can you please tell us what exactly is going on with the Libertarian Party itself? Because you've been saying in the, but let's say to everybody else, that it's been existing, the Libertarian Party of Canada, for now 53 years, right?
Approximately, yeah. I think since 1973, yeah, it was when we were founded.
But then there are problems with its registration. It's what the heck happened for that?
So my understanding, because again, I became leader at the beginning of May. Our deregistration actually happened at the end of March. So when I was running for the leadership is when that happened. And it was because of a board member at the time who's no longer a board member and has no authority within the party, forgot to send in a form. And because those forms were not sent in, we now have to confirm we are a party. Part of that is getting members to send in a form to confirm their membership, which we had enough people do. But then Elections Canada sends out a second form to all of those people to reconfirm. That is what we are now waiting on. We are waiting on, I believe, another 100 of those people to email that second form to Elections Canada. Once that has happened, we will be officially registered as a party again. The real big thing about that is once we are registered, we can start issuing tax receipts again. And that means we can get, then we can also have candidates, our name on the ballot. That's the important thing because we have by-elections coming up. And that's something that we already are, because a lot of people think that we're not doing anything because they're like, oh, well, this is still not done. It's not a fast process. It's the government system. If we had a say in it, we would be done already. We don't have a say in that. We are just doing as much as we can. I'm literally calling members saying, hey, did you get the form? Yes, great. Can you do it out? So I've been trying to I'm not making a lot of progress, but I'm trying to call members and say, like, please just get that form in. We have until mid-August or beginning of August, I think, for this round. So we can get that even better. But we are also getting ready as if we are going to be registered again here shortly. So with those elections coming up, we are getting people ready to get signatures and get people on the ballots. We're hoping the riding in Quebec will get a candidate. We're hoping Beaches East York will definitely have a candidate. And we're hoping in Saskatchewan, Alex, one of our VPs, will also be running as well. It's his riding. So we're hoping, like, if Beaches East York, if we don't have someone as a member step up, I've already told the board that I will step up and run in that by-election and get the signatures because we need someone in that riding. We've never had anyone in that riding run for the party. So if it has to be me, and so we can get some more people understanding, basically our mission is that once we are through this mess, if there's a by-election, we will have someone on that ballot, whether it's me, whether it's Michael, or it's someone living in that riding. When I say Michael Harris, our deputy leader out in Alberta, who ran against Pierre in the Battle River Crowfoot by-election. So, like I said, we will do our best to have someone. We will have people with our new youth wing that we just started. We will get them working with us to be out there collecting signatures to make sure we always have someone on a ballot. Ballot access is the biggest thing. The U.S. party would tell you the same thing. The more times you see one of our candidates on ballot, the more people are going to ask what the heck who we are, right? That's the big
thing. Yeah, well, that leads that opens the question of your team, basically. You've talked about this Michael, who's apparently well known. I didn't know him, but it's a big country, right?
Yeah, it is.
So
Michael Harris.
Yeah,
he is our deputy leader, but he's also he ran in that by-election that Pierre won to get the seat out in Alberta. That is his riding though. he lives in that riding. But he impressed a lot of people when he ran. He was out at the debates. He was knocking on doors. He did more for that movement, I think, than a lot of people have done in a long time for this party. And he didn't want to take on the leadership role as well because he recognizes he's young and he's still doing a lot with Students for Liberty as well. But one of the things we talked about early on, because we've been talking for almost a year now, that he wanted a youth wing. And I agree. That's one of the reasons I got involved in the Conservatives when I mentioned that as I was part of the youth wing. I mentioned that's actually how I met, as I said, Patrick Brown before, the mayor of Brampton. We became friends as part of the youth wing when he became president of the PC Youth Federation. And I think it's very important to have that youth wing. And so now he's also not only deputy leader, he's the first interim president of the Libertarian Youth Network, or as we call it, LYNX, LYNX. We think it's every political party knows the importance of youth in this country, and having him show, or he goes out and he says every day what we should all be doing. He's out there telling people why our message speaks to them. He's out in the farmers, he's out in the local communities, the ones that know they don't need a government to tell them how to live their lives. And he's got so much energy. I can't say enough. Like, he inspires me, and that says a lot. But we become good friends, and we are a team. Like, that is it. Like, we, just like when I was deputy leader for Tim, we were on the same page. We talk on a regular basis. We have our plans, and we're working together. And I think, as you mentioned, team is the big thing. Alex is our VP of political action. I've been chatting with him again for over a year now. We've been working together. We still have some of the establishment in our executive as well that have been around before to give us that connection as well. So I think we have a very solid team that is not solid to one area as well. When I was deputy leader before, our executive was made up of a lot of Ontario members. One of the things I love right now is we have members on our executive right now from East Coast, from Ontario, and from Alberta and Saskatchewan. I think that's a great representation. I think we also have BC, actually, now that I think about it too. So it's very important that we have an executive that can represent all of Canada. I want to have those voices for Quebec. It's one of the reasons why I reached out to you a while back when we first started talking, is I want to have that connection with libertarians everywhere, because you guys are able to tell me a lot better what's going on in Quebec than I can do by just going there once a week, 1 week a year, right? You guys live it. Just like you have no idea what's going on in Niagara Falls, or as you just mentioned, you don't know necessarily what's going on for Michael out in Alberta. And that's okay. Like I said, we're a big country. We're the second biggest country in the world. And I think that's why it's important to be connected like this, so that we can work together and achieve these similar goals without having to communicate together all the time as well. So I think it's very good to see that. When I know when I first started, there was really the Ontario Provincial Party, and I think there was a talk of the provincial party in Quebec starting back then in the early 2010s, something like that. But there's a lot of potential in this country for it, and we just need to get more provincial parties to work with us as well, so that if we help our members create those provincial parties in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Nova Scotia, anywhere they don't have one already. Newfoundland's already, as we mentioned, has a great infrastructure. They're doing great work out there as well. So we just need to keep this movement going. We need to keep it alive. And if we keep hearing the Conservatives and the PPC, to bring it back to them, using our talking points, we're doing something right. As everyone always will say, we've been around since 1973, as I mentioned, and we have never had a member of parliament. But if you look at what our policy and platform was in 1973, look at what our laws are today, we've been doing a lot since 1973, because Canada's got more of our laws now. We wouldn't be legal if it wasn't for us, right? That's been part of our policy since 1973. And we still believe
what wouldn't be legal or illegal, you said?
Well, it probably would, but we are the party libertarians have been pushing for legalization of marijuana since 1973, since we were a party. It was one of the founding policies of the party. It was one of the things to be founded was marijuana, but we've expanded even further that decriminalization of drugs. I mentioned to you in our chat that Timon, who was the leader when I was deputy leader, went viral. It's because of a meme that I've learned many people use it. Everyone has a different variation of it. His was, I want same-sex couples to protect their marijuana plants with AK-47s. Like the idea, like that's the libertarian ideals of across the board. We approve same-sex marriage, right? Well, actually, I'll rephrase that. We don't believe in government-sanctioned marriage. That's the better way to point our position on, right? But if you and if two consenting adults, three consenting adults, four consenting adults want to get together and have an agreement of whatever benefits all of you and you're not harming anyone else, whatever. I'm not going to judge. I might judge, but I
good
won't
for
judge.
you, as we say.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I say. Like, it's your right to do that, but that's where the whole left versus right? Like where left wing, like right wing is like, oh no, Christians don't believe in that, or like that's not right. We don't care, right? And so that's another example of the left versus right, where we believe in allowing people to enter into mutual beneficial contracts if they wish, just as much as we believe the government should be not providing social welfare.
What would be your take on what I would describe as one of the biggest problems that I'm facing in Quebec, with especially with the so-called resistance, is that the moment you start using terms like libertarian, left or right, even just to speak intelligently, as you've done, to make important distinctions and remove stupid labels, but I don't know if it's as bad as this in Western Canada, but people are going to tend to answer you with contempt. It's like, you don't understand something, that politics, it's all bad. And first, the system is broken. That's another issue, that there might be, cheating, as I think there's been happening, or like, I think it's become now official that there's been at least Chinese interference with the Dominion machines and so on. Anyway, that's one thing. But the second is that the moment you use a term, an ideology, a label like libertarian, they're so upset, they're so tired of all this, that those people that we would need, the upset people, the one who actually would want to see an end to this very system, they're gonna basically spit at you and turn their back on you, and say that we don't understand anything, or all those very wise things that they understand.
There's ways to turn it around to people, but the one thing that I hear from both, like no matter which party they support, I hear from them when they hear I'm a libertarian, like, oh, you don't care about people. Where I will always turn it around on them to show them how much we actually do care about people, and they don't. Because I say, how much money are you getting to the people that need help right now, when you have one, a middleman that you have to give that money to then give it to the people that need it. Two, people that are helping them are paid government salaries, not free volunteers. And three, how can you stop that if the program's not working? When we have charity helping people, one, you have discrimination. Now, that right there is where we're going to lose people. When I say, yeah, you should be able to discriminate. Charity should be able to discriminate for the exact reasons that we talked about earlier. Immigration. They can be like, no, the people that are giving us money don't want it to go to people that are not Canadian. That's your choice. Whether it's the right choice, that's up for debate for each individual. That's what we're about. Making sure you can decide the money goes to the charity that supports the people in the way you want that help. Now, people will say there will be a lot of people that will get hurt. Yeah. People will get hurt. People get hurt now. There's no system that's perfect. This is the big thing that people think. They think some party, some political movement is going to come around and create a utopia. Utopias don't exist. There is no perfect society. No solution will have a 100% success rate. What we want is what's fair. What's fair is that you decide where your money goes, not a bureaucrat. Not a bureaucrat that was elected, as I've mentioned this to many people. How many people live in this country? Over 30 million people. How many people voted for the Liberals? 8.5. 8.5 million people made a vote that is just making the decisions for every other person in this country. That's what's wrong. The fact that that many people, that few people, I should say, are deciding what's going on for over 20 million people. Where our system, libertarianism, will allow all over 30 to 40 million people in this country to get what they want. If you're living in a community that's not providing you with what you want, you pack your stuff up and you move to the community that does. That's what happens when you have the local ability to have those sovereign provinces and those local communities. Those communities that are strong will bring people in. Right now, one of the biggest things is people think that they shouldn't have to move for a job. Like, people, I hear it all the time. I can't find work. I have a degree. I should be able to get a job. You have a job experience in oil financing and you're looking for a job in Toronto. If you want a job, if you have a job in oil financing, you move to Alberta where the oil is. Oh, I don't want to live with conservatives. Then why did you get a job in oil financing? Why did you get a degree in financing? Like, it boggles my mind that people want the best of both worlds. They want everything handed to them, but they don't want to have to pay for it at the same point. Right?
And they want the system to continue, but then at the same time, they want to yell at it and criticize it and even say it's totally unfounded, but they're not going to do anything to abolish it for real, which would be libertarianism as far as I'm concerned.
And one of the things I got to say, I was very lucky when I had mentioned it before, I ran for the Ontario Libertarian Party in North Bay for the Nipissing riding. I got very lucky because I got to participate in the debate. And not only that, I got to have the final statement. So they drew numbers, I won. So I got to have the final statement and the closing statements. And all I had to do was look at them and say, and now again, this is Ontario politics, but I just said that tonight, everyone over there said how they're going to spend your money. I'm the only one that said I'm going to give you your money back and not take it in the first place. So I ask you now, Mike Harris, Bob Ray, Belton McGinty, did they spend your money how you want? So why were they? Then I literally was just the mic drop moment. And I was like, you just heard the gasp in the audience. And then that was it. And I got lucky. And it's true. Like, people were like, my guy's going to fix it. No, your guy's not going to fix it. Because your guy loves the system the way it is. They're just going to tell you they're going to fix it, make it look like they fixed it, and just keep paying their monies.
That makes me think of Trump, because you've said in the pre-interview that you've been to the Libertarian Convention this year in where was that? In Michigan, right?
Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Yeah. Grand Rapids. I remember like a few years ago, I wasn't there, but I've seen pictures, including a sign that someone had where it was written "Mega equals socialism." I found it was so clever because, like you said before, one of the problems of the mega approach is that it's extremely nationalist, especially on the economic front with the protectionism and so on. But it's also, to me, it's true. It's any system like Trump's system or Poilievre's system that keeps the current socialist governments in place. Well, it's even if you do a few twists and a few cuts here and there, like they've done with the Dodge program, okay, but all the architecture, all the bulk of the elephant stays there. It's the same, especially here in Quebec with Eric Duham's so-called current Conservative Party. It's going to do a few patches and then a few tricks to impress people to get them vote to them, but it's all the same sort of fraud, being in a sense.
You mentioned Trump at 2 years ago. He was at the Libertarian National Convention. I'm
And
actually really yeah, and good for that, for booing him, for what? And that's one thing. Like when I was there, I heard people talking about, because there were some that didn't boo. Let's be honest, he was booed, but there was a lot that he was invited. Let's be honest, he was invited because he was saying the right things. And that's why I'm glad you brought it up, because Pierre is doing what he did. Trump said everything he needed to say to get elected, and then he's doing whatever he wants now. Mm-hmm. That's what Pierre's doing. Pierre's saying what he knows is popular. Everyone hates the government right now. We've been tired of the government for 12 years. But I heard this message. I heard it from Harper. I heard Harper say, we're tired of Cristiano Martin doing all these things. We will do it better. Because they didn't have the financial aspect that they could go off on Martin and the Liberals for. Harper had to go off on them for their voting records and what was the big one that they were, I forget what the big one that he was going off. Oh, the gun buyback program. That's obviously how I forgot that. But yeah, he was going after them for the gun buyback program. But we even put a post out today on the Parti website about this, that the Liberals will put in all these new restrictions on guns. Then the Conservatives will do a little bit of a rollback. Then the Liberals come in and do more, then a little bit of rollback. Why aren't the Conservatives just getting rid of it completely? Just completely scrap the Firearms Act. I literally said this in my live on yesterday, and I will have clips coming out throughout the week. We will scrap the Firearms Act because there is literally no reason for it to do. We talked about this in the pre that you can't. You're treating non-criminals as criminals before they commit a crime. You can't treat someone as a criminal if they haven't actually committed a crime. You aren't committing a crime by wanting to defend your family. You might not agree with how someone wants to defend their family, but that's not your right to decide. If you don't like how they're going to defend their property, there's one way you can prevent that. Don't go on their property. It's that simple. Because if you don't go on their property, they can't do anything to you. That's our belief, that you come on my property, everything's off. Like
it's sort of a bad idea.
Yeah, it's like if you know that there's a chance that you walk onto someone's property without permission, without them knowing, and there's a sign that says no trespassing, and you know our laws are designed that says that they can shoot you for doing it, are you going to do it? No. But there's too many people who say, well, what if I want to do? No, you don't. Everyone thinks that they just have the right to encroach on your property, encroach on your rights, just because they think they have a great message to give to you, or whatever the reason is for them to justify coming onto your property. People are like, mailman. There are plenty of mailboxes that are at the road. It's like, oh, so you want laws so that you can be convenient so you don't have to walk to your road to get your mail. No, we don't need all these blanket laws. So it creates convenience for you. People want to think that the government's there for their best interest. I wish it was. I really, really wish government was there for our interest, but they're not. We all know they're not. They're there for their interest. That's why we have the term career politician, because they know what they're doing. It's what we said about the loopholes. Can we really blame someone for it? No, but we're letting them get away with it. That's why I can't blame them. I'm blaming the people that keep letting them get away with it. The people that think that the Conservatives and the Liberals are different. There is no difference between them. Just because they say different things and they do a little bit of tweaks. At the end of the day, they don't give us back all of our freedom. They want to control some part of our life. What part of that they want to control is the difference. But they want to control a part of your life. They want your money.
It's a very good proof and sign that what we call left-wing totalitarianism or right-wing totalitarianism, fascism and communism. In the end, it's so much just two sides of the same coin that it very much applies to the national politics. Of course, in a less extreme way, but And at the end of the day, you have a totalitarian, more and more totalitarian package, and more authoritarian package deal, which is the current government. And that stays the same, whether regardless of the party that's there. So the same public function, the same government apparatus stays there, be it at the national or the provincial level. But you're just gonna twist. You're just gonna play on a little bit on the version of it, on the values that are being promoted, not let alone apply. But so in a sense, in one version is going to be more communist oriented, like, we're going to protect the minorities and give more money to all kinds of people, and communism is a sort of individualism. This and that, and kind of people need to be protected. Everybody have to be protected. Then you're going to have this. This more nationalist version, which is going to be incarnated here by the Poilievre's party, and that let's cut a bit more on this and that, and let's get a bit more efficient, and because of the national interest, let's be a bit tougher on crime. But at the end of the day, it's almost more verbiage and rhetoric than anything else.
It's a lot of it. I think it comes back to what we were saying about, like, again, the differences in what people know, right? And they expect everything black and white, liberal, conservative. And so when we come in and we show them it's not black or white, and we have these, what we know as common sense ideas, but to them, compared to the black and white ideas, is crazy. We said it already with the marriage one, right? That's one of the big ones where the left believe in same-sex marriage, believe in equality for all the LGBT alphabet community. But then you have the right that believe in same-sex marriage, or don't believe in same-sex marriage as much. They believe in the traditional family rule, where we're just said that we just don't think government should be involved in marriage at all. And that's what really throws people off. Like, what do you wait, government? Like, their heads explode when we say that there's no need for a marriage license. They don't understand that you don't need a marriage license. A marriage license is a contract between two individuals. Go to a lawyer, fill out a contract, and sign it. There, you're part of a marriage. That's literally what it should be. And I think when we do that, it's not just on marriage. It's on pretty much every issue that we have. We have that different view where it's not black, it's not white, it's in the middle. And we're pointing on it right there, where the conservatives want to do this tweak, the liberals want to do this tweak. They each want to change the dials a little bit on the machine, but we just want to get rid of the machine. Like, that's the difference. Like, they want to tweak the machine this way, they want to do it this way, we want to get rid of the machine. That's the simplest way to put it.
They're going to scold us and laugh at us and say we didn't understand something very basic, like, don't divide the vote. We have to vote for one of the parties to get elected, not realizing that they're there for that. They're there for the same both reason. Are going to be very happy to maintain the system in place. And while you talk of black and white, but it's only in appearance. It's only in the discourse. And people fall for that and believe that I'm a right wing and I'm a left wing. Okay, but it's more like a question of style. It's like what T-shirt you wear and what is what fashion do you follow. It's more that, because it's absolutely the same package at the end of the day.
It's just one's wearing a blue tie, one's wearing a red tie. That's all it
exactly.
Yeah, it's just it's a big task for us to tell them that we really need to change these things. But we need to make sure that they understand that there's a different way of thinking. You don't need the government to get involved. When you mentioned Argentina earlier about the open borders, and again, as I said, I'm in favor of open borders once we solve that other issue, once we get rid of the social safety net, because I don't want anyone coming in here and taking taxpayers' money. I want to get that gone. Once that's gone, you want to come and contribute, great. We'd love you. And this is where I'll just mention real quick about the PPC, where that's where I noticed the issue being more on the race issue than on the actual economic issue, because most of the ones that come back to me on that, they are not in favor of when I say compete for the job. It's like, no, we Canadians should get that job. No, the best person for the job should get the job. That's what we should all want. And this is how I explain it. Like, you want that lazy person down the street that weighs 320 pounds get that job? Or do you want the person that's going to come work 60 hours a week and not complain, do that job? Who do you think is going to do a better job at it? Who's going to improve a better product? Because that's what it really comes down to. If a Canadian company in Canada is producing a great product, the domino effect is great. That just benefits the Canadian economy, benefits everybody. But if we're just caring about nationalism and getting Canadians employed for whatever reason, what happens is you get terrible products. Same thing with communism. It's just like, they say it's, but what is the saying about communism? To each their ability, their ways, or whatever. I forget what the actual their motto is. But
in French, we say à chacun selon ses forces, selon ses besoins, right?
Yeah, like to each his ability, their ways, or whatever their saying is. Though it's all the same thing. It's just ways to control people, and it's to make this belief that you have, the rest of society has a right to what you earned, and
that you have a choice. It gives you the illusion of a choice.
Yeah, it's all the illusion that people just don't understand that they're being lied to, and that's what I'm trying to get through to people, that they think because I'll criticize conservatives because I'm trying to criticize both, because they're both responsible for where we are. But the minute you criticize conservatives, they're like, oh, you're a liberal. You're not even listening to what I'm telling you. Your leader doesn't believe what he's saying, and here's the facts. Oh, that's propaganda. No, here's the voting record. Here's the voting record. Here it is. It's not propaganda. I didn't put it out. It's there. Are you saying he didn't vote that way?
And if you do that, if you criticize him, you're gonna be labeled as a vote divider, as a sort of a traitor. In Quebec, it gets very intense. They're gonna call you a divider. So basically, shut your mouth and let the show go on. That's then you're sure to have no problem.
Yeah. So it's just, I don't want Canada to get to the point of Argentina. Like, we have to understand where Argentina was when they voted for a libertarian president who cut the things they did. He's cutting drastically because he has to. We don't need to. We can, but we can do it slowly so that we're a success, and so that we can.
And while we'll still have some money to allow us to do the transition in a more peaceful and humanitarian way. But exactly. What some journalists have had the guts to say concerning Millet. They said, oh, well, he had no choice. So, of course, it's normal to have done it. They sort of brush it off in this very irresponsible way. So what's the point to wait that long, to wait to get into that deep into the shithole before to do what has to be done?
Best analogy is, if your car goes off a bridge and is sinking into water, do you wait until the car gets to the bottom before getting out, or do you get out as fast as you can? Right? Like, you're sinking, get out. We need to get out. So this is my way of saying the car is sinking, Canada. It's time to get out.
Yeah, that could be an extremely good conclusion. It's just that, well, there's just a few more questions.
Sure.
Out of curiosity, and apparently I find you're interesting, right?
That's a good
politically speaking.
Yeah.
So, well, you've been talking about being a career politician, but isn't it a bit of your case? I mean, you've been there for a very long time. but without it being a career, because we haven't been talking about what you've done as a living and so on. But anyway, feel free to describe what is the
So
what you can tell us about that. All that.
I consider the difference between whether you know what it's like to live in struggle. The career politicians know what it makes to struggle when they're making six figures. Pierre Poilievre, since he got elected, has been making six figures. Now he has a house paid for by the taxpayer. He does not know what it's like to struggle. I've lived on my own. I've lived with my wife. I've raised my son. I've worked jobs where I was a manager at a convenience store. I've worked as a call center representative, tech support, worked as a dealer at a casino, been a travel agent. I've worked jobs that the average Canadian has worked. I just find the ways to pay the bills. I've made the choices. I've made decisions that decided, look, I had to think about what am I going to afford to buy tonight? Like, what kind of meal can I cook tonight? Because I know I can afford rent and I know I can afford this and this. I can't get McDonald's. I can remember where I was eating the double hamburger combo, like burgers that were 99 cents at the time because they were like my treat. When you have two $1 burgers as your treat, you know the struggles Canadians have gone through and you can speak up for them. It's disgusting to me when you hear someone that gets paid six figures and talks about the grocery store prices. These photo ops drive me up the wall. When I see them going into places like Sobeys and IGA and Foodland and Metro, the average Canadian does not shop at these stores. They shop at No Frills, or I don't know what No Frills is called in Quebec, but the no-name store. We shop at the No Frills stores. We shop at Freshco. We shop at Food Basics. I shop at grocery stores like Walmart because we have to. Because we want to make that dollar stretch. The dollar that the Conservatives and the Liberals have made worth less and less every year. And so a career politician is someone that has to say that he was a paper boy as a way to make him seem like he's like everybody else. I just heard him say it again when he talked about being a paper boy in Calgary at the Stampede. Like, that doesn't help. Were you a dishwasher at Kelsey's? I was. I know what it was like working those close shifts at night, struggling, having to be like in that soaking wet chef's outfit on a long night just so I can make my bills. I know what it was like to drive a 1992 Toyota Camry for 10 years because I needed to, because I couldn't afford a new car. That's what it's about. I don't have a driver. I have the ability to go all over this country on the taxpayer dime. That's what makes me different than a career politician. It makes me a Canadian, not a politician.
And yeah, but then you're probably much more professional in your approach to politics, especially because of that. It's just like there's no conflict of interest. It's not a job. You do it out of passion and
my heart,
beliefs and values, right?
It is principles.
But just but to make sure of how the switch, the mental sort of insight came, it's, if I get it well, it's very much Ron Paul that made you realize what the libertarianism was all about.
He was the one that made me start reading about, and that's what made me realize I really was. Because when I was progressive conservative, the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada's motto was fiscally conservative, socially progressive, which is kind of libertarianism, right? They were very centrist. And that's why I'm like, I believe that the government doesn't belong in your bedroom. That was one of the big talking points for the PC party back then. Government doesn't belong in your bedroom. What that means is your personal choices are yours, not the government to dictate. Now, that can get people upset, especially right now with how proliferant the LGBTQ community is, right? Like, there's a lot of belief that we have to overcompensate. The same thing when people talk about the wage gap between men and women. We have to do something to fight that. But do we? The best thing to do is get the government out of the way, because every time the government has stepped in to fix one of these problems, it's made the problem worse. So when you had DEI, sorry, in the US and Canada, one of the big issues is people resented it. Charlie Kirk has always been, rest in peace, Charlie Kirk, he was always misunderstood for the DEI comment, where he said if he saw a black pilot, he's going to question their ability because of DEI. What he's trying to say that is there's no DEI and you see a black pilot, you know they're qualified because they got the job based on their qualifications, not because of a quota. Where when the quota's there, as I said before, they hire a Canadian versus a better qualified foreigner, you're getting a worse product. So you have to start wondering, did they hire someone that was here when there was a candidate here because this person checked a box? Like, I want this person creating my product, not this person, just because they are underrepresented. And we don't want to force that onto businesses. That's our thing. It's for the consumer to decide. So whether it's how they have their bathrooms, whether it's how they treat their employees, if you don't like what a business does, stop giving them your money. If you don't like what Walmart pays their employees, stop shopping at Walmart. This is what I said before. People won't do that because they don't want to pay the proper price. Because if they actually were going to the stores that paid their employees what they want, they'd be shopping at Foodland in Sobeys and will have to make sacrifices because those grocery bills are going to be ridiculous. And I think that's what people need to realize, is that the true price for what you want is a lot higher than you think it is. People talk about how the government is involved in this. We already know inflation, all these fancy words that a lot of people have different excuses for. But the bottom line comes down to the government is getting in our business and they're causing that prices to go up, where if we stop those prices from going up, in other words, minimum wage, get rid of minimum wage, instantly prices go down. And people will say the race to the bottom. It's not a race to the bottom. It's a race to the proper wage. As we know, for people that don't know supply and demand economics, you see your XY scale thing, boom, boom. The price where supply and demand, the price where they meet, that's the proper price. That's equilibrium price. That's what we should want, not a government controlled price. So you will eventually get to that. People will say you can't live off that. It's not the government's job to negotiate a salary for you. If you can't survive because of your skills don't provide for you that, find alternatives. I know I'm rambling, but I'll go into one of the things that I just really want to see. As my travels, as I lived in the Philippines, one of the things I saw there that was so common that I think needs to be brought back here. People says, I can't afford a job to make my ends meet working at McDonald's. It's because you're living on your own. Why are you living on your own when you work at McDonald's? You do not have a God-given right to live on your own. If you can't afford to live on your own, don't. The 3-generational household needs to be made normal in North America. If you are not married and you can contribute to your parents' home and their mortgage, why aren't you? It only benefits both of you. If you do not have to pay rent, think of if you have $1,000 rent right now, and instead you want to live at home with your parents, you can now take $500 instead and give it to their mortgage. Their mortgage is paid off sooner, which means you now have a better place to stay later on. That other $500 you can put into savings. That savings can be used for whatever you want later down the road, instead of wasting it on rent that you're never going to see come back. And so I just want people to understand that you don't have a right to what you think you do. You don't have a right to a comfortable life. Unless, if you are a good person, people will be there to help you. When you're struggling, people are going to help you. And that's where our part of where we said earlier, where we really do care about people. A lot of people say that libertarians are the ones that don't care. The left, the right, that's the one thing they come together on is libertarians don't care about people. But we care about people so much that we don't need the government to do it for us. We are the ones that want to go out there and make sure that when my neighbor's husband passes away, I'm going to get that casserole to them. I'm going to go knock on their door. What do you need? Because they're a good person. They come and help me. To the other neighbor that flips me off every time I try to pull out of my driveway, no, I'm not going to go help him. That's how it's supposed to work.
It's
right?
probably the best side, the best component of libertarianism. What in French we call l'entraide. I don't even know what would be the English translation for it, but people helping each other basically is the best side of humanity. And it's the more government you put, the more place and size you give to government, the less you have of that, because people rely and expect the government to do everything. But I remember here that when there's been the crise du verglas, and amongst other things, the moment there's an electric shutdown or things like this, people they have to interact with each other and help each other. So that gives you a hint of how wonderful it would be if we had to do this more often. And so people, it's indeed paradoxical that they would tend to see libertarians as individualistic and careless, while this can also happen in certain circles, in certain fringes of the movement, but basically it's very sad, because we're the one who want to bring back humanity at its finest, essentially.
Think about how good Canadians would be if they knew the only way that they were going to get help in their time of need is to be a good person.
I bet we have friends and to be kind to each other.
Yeah, exactly. We would be much happier, much more friendly to each other. And we're already known as being the friendly people. But if we had to actually be good to our neighbors for that moment that we need help, the world would be a much better place.
Exactly, and that's it. Also works for within the party, as we were saying, teamwork and putting the vision first. That's one of the reasons why we're doing this right now, because we had never met before, but we are united by the same spirit and the same goal. And that's also a good reason why we have to have this same fire and belief, which, for instance, Jan Rushdie didn't actually have. He was instead of vision, he had ambition. Was focused on his things, his views, and okay, maybe I could switch to another party. Again, that's exactly what he contemplated doing, just like the other politicians. So if we could just leave the rest of the politics and focus on a clear vision and see how we can interact and help each other's be it only in the hope and goal of fulfilling and applying this, maybe it would be a better start.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in that view, I guess you can obviously count on my support. So if whenever you have to come in Quebec, you just let me know, and who knows, maybe I'll eventually have to do the same on the other side of the Ontario's border.
Absolutely. We'll be happy to have you anytime. And we're hoping to have a big AGM here in Niagara Falls actually next year. So hopefully we can get a lot of people to come out and, one, enjoy Niagara Falls, because it's a great place for people to come with their families and enjoy, but at the same point come together as one big libertarian family. And I think that's what I really want people to see. Is one of the things that New Brunswick does very well as well, is they're really involved in helping the community. And I think that's one thing that we can always take away, is that we need to be the change that we are promoting. If we're promoting libertarianism ideas, we need to live our libertarian ideas every day. We can still do that in this day and age too, in this government. We can
It's
Go and
true.
help our kids.
It's
Just
true.
go help
And
your.
so just as we need to materialize our ideals, so to say, people, I think most people would especially have to sort of intellectualize and ideologize their own needs and wishes. I think one of the biggest problems we have, especially in Quebec, but also in Canada, many people would be or should be libertarians. They sort of don't even know themselves, or they have a problems with identifying themselves or putting any label, and you're losing them from that very moment. But if people would just, okay, fine, don't vote. You don't want to vote. It's a panic. It's a violence. It's a great suffering for you to put your X on the paper. As if the world will crumble down because it's such a spoiled system. It's gonna stain you. Just be fine. Well, why don't you come to our meetings? Why don't you interact with us? Why don't you watch our videos? Why don't you focus on what is the solution? If it's not, what else is? Tell me.
That's true. We just need to make people understand that. I've always said it's like everyone's a libertarian, they just don't realize it yet.
Yes. So on this very good summary, I thank you very much. Very nice to meet you.
Same to you.
I'm going to invite everybody to share this video as much as possible. You know, because this is more than real talk, but it is also real talk about the real things, and it would be good that more people would put this into their ears and heads, I think.
For sure. And my apologies that I wasn't able to speak in French, but I'm hoping in the future that next time I come on, I will be able to speak some more French for everybody.
And who knows, maybe I can get to practice my English more often by interacting more with your with your party.
Well, we're starting our podcast. We do our podcast now. We're going to be doing it every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And every other week, we're going to try to have a guest. So hopefully we can arrange time to have you come on and be a guest and answer a few questions for a few minutes as well.
Great. So we'll keep in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you again. And well,
bonsoir.
Have a bonne continuation, as we say here.
Thank you.
So see you later. Thanks, everyone. Bye.